Okay.
It's about to go live. It takes about a minute for it to go live, so.
Okay.
Hi, it's Janine again. Okay, the meeting is live now.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Brown has joined us. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Cuyahoga County Health and Human Services and Aging Committee. Today is Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021, and it's 1 o'clock. Can we have a roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
On the roll, Ms. Conwell,
Present.
Mr. Sweeney,
Present.
Ms. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Miller,
Here.
Ms. Stevens. Ms. Stevens, you were muted, but I saw you move your lips. She's here.
All right.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Has anyone sent anything for public comment in? I didn't see anything.
No, Madam Chair, no public comment was submitted.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 20th, 2021 meeting. Is there a second?
Second, Sweeney.
All right, moved and seconded by Sweeney. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Minutes have been approved. We have one matter referred to the committee today and 2 presentations. So Madam Clerk, if you could read the first item into the record, please.
Resolution number 2021-0060, authorizing an amendment to a master contract with various providers for family-centered support services for at-risk children and families for the period January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2020, to extend the time period to December 31st, 2021, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $2,665,000.
All right, who is speaking to this today?
Good afternoon, committee members and Chairwoman Conwell. Paul Porter, Health and Human Services, on behalf of the Division of Children and Family Services. I'm joined by the Director of Health and Human Services, David Merriman, as well as Karen Storman from the Division of Children and Family Services. And I'll give a brief introduction to the item, and then if there's anything to add, they'll have the opportunity to do so. DCFS is exercising a final option year amendment for our FCSS program, the Family Centered Support Services contracts that cover 10 vendors for a variety of services designed to help keep children and families together in their homes. These include high fidelity wraparound team services, evidence-based programming like therapies and different treatment modalities. There's a nurturing parenting program that's a component of this, as well as supported visits and medical case management for kids that might have unique medical needs. The amendment amount is lower this year due to lower than anticipated utilization based on our experience in 2020. We're extending this contract at a value of $2,665,000 for 2021 versus a cost in 2019 and 2020 of $3.5 million per year during those years. The utilization was lower than anticipated in 2020, primarily related to the pandemic. And I would defer to Karen to speak a little bit more specifically about that. I don't know, David, if you have anything you would like to add at this point, or Karen as well.
Good afternoon. This is Karen Storman from the Division of Children and Family Services. As Paul had indicated, we did see a impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, obviously resulting in a lower number of referrals. And we are slowly building capacity and have increased marketing efforts that kind of meet our workforce where they're at, given some of the workforce changes that have occurred over the last year. So we anticipate hopefully getting back to normal with the ability and capacity to service these needy families. in 2021.
All right, so I take it, Karen, this was not an environment that virtual worked very well.
Many of our providers, some of which are on the call this afternoon, are continuing to provide a virtual platform in terms of service delivery. However, I know that we are working closely when it's safe to do so to see families in person, given the effectiveness of service delivery in that setting.
I had one question in terms of, and I guess it's directed to Paul, the age group of the children that are serviced.
At this point, and Karen, you might have a bit more specifics about the data, but this covers all ages, I believe. So, some of the programs are geared more towards infants. Some of the other programs are geared towards families that might have teens in the home. I don't know if you want to offer specifics about which programs deal with which age groups, Karen, but I believe this does cover the whole spectrum of ages that would be served by DCFS.
Good afternoon. Yes, this is Karen Storman. That's correct. The services do cover all infants to young adults up to age 18. Some of the services are geared more towards a younger age child. However, many of the services can meet the needs of the families where they're at. So we do cover all ages.
Right. And one other question in regards to, from me, in regards to the, I believe it was 2,665,000. That's the county's portion, correct, Paul?
That's the entire contract value, and I can double check. Hold on a second. Let me pull up my notes about which funding source covers that, but that's the entire amount for 2021. 33% of that value would be HHS levy. 67% were able to get reimbursement through federal Title IV dollars. So the portion would actually be 33% of that amount. So it's much lower than the whole 2.6 million.
Right, and I saw that, and I was wondering why we actually put the whole contract amount in there, or not having a description of what it is actually costing us from the HHS funds, or is it like a reimbursement from the Title E fund? So that's why. Okay.
Exactly. The contract itself designates the entire amount that could be spent, and it's a not to exceed value. So if we end up spending less than that, our actual outlay may be even lower than that 2.6 million. But the county pays the vendors, and then for the Title IV dollars, those are federal reimbursements that we're able to capture.
I'd like to open it up for any questions from my colleagues.
Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you very much. I was just curious, you identified that 10 facilities benefit from this contract. Can you identify those facilities for me, please?
Absolutely. And again, as Karen mentioned, we do have some of those vendors on the call today. It's in alphabetical order: Applewood Centers, Beachbrook, Belfair Jewish Children's Bureau, Catholic Charities, Cleveland Christian Home Incorporated, Mental Health Services for Homeless Persons, which does business as Frontline Service, Ohio Guidestone, Ohio Mentor, Presley Ridge, and Specialized Alternatives for Families and Youth of Ohio, also known as SAFI.
Okay, thank you. And then at the top of your presentation, you said that we were exercising some type of clause. Was that a termination clause?
No, we're exercising, by doing this amendment, the final option year that was contained in the contract when we initially RFP'd this. And that's a good thing to note, Councilwoman Brown. We will be issuing another RFP for these services later in 2021. And it will be a brand new contract to start in January of 2022. So we anticipate this being the final year of the current contract. You know, if utilization dramatically increases, there could be a scenario where we would have to do an amendment to add funds to this agreement. That's why we don't say that it's the final amendment to the contract. We're just exercising the option for the final year on the contract, and we don't anticipate this specific master agreement extending any further than 12/21 or 12/31 of 2021.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you. I just wasn't clear. So the final option. So all venues and parties have been notified that they will have to essentially reapply for the funding based on the new RFP. So
when we send out the new RFP, we'll make sure all current vendors as well as any additional vendors are notified. The initial contract that was developed and the prior RFP contains specific details about what's called the work schedule for this program. And in that RFP that was issued a couple of years ago, it specified that 2021 would be the final year of funding under this project.
Okay, good. All right. So I just want to make sure that they're clear that this is the last year that they would budget essentially for receiving such funds. So, and that they are on notice that they would need to essentially begin to consider how to reapply for this new agreement when we release the RFP in 22 or at the end of this year.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, my colleague, Councilwoman Brown, on that line of questioning. You mentioned, Paul, that all the current ones will be notified, and you said the ones that aren't on will be notified. How are you going to identify that universe of people or entities that may want to respond to the RFP?
Absolutely. Thanks, Councilman Sweeney. When we prepare what's called a plan holders list, it is a list that we establish of any and all vendors in the area that provide similar social services. So oftentimes our RFPs might go out to a couple hundred vendors, and then we might get responses from a small fraction of those. I would say that in HHS, our process involves casting as wide a net as possible to ensure that vendors who might not have ever been involved with this contract before get a fair shake and adequate notice at a chance to get a contract under that RFP. So again, we typically review, not just this universe of vendors, but maybe vendors we do business with under other contracts, vendors that have contracts with private insurance companies or Medicare and Medicaid for some of the therapies that are included. So it really ends up being a very large network of vendors that receive notice of the RFP, and then they can submit a proposal if they so choose.
And thank you, Madam Chairwoman. May I continue a little bit more?
Yes.
Thank you. And Paul, thank you for that very specific answer. Everybody that you send an RFP, you know that they're eligible to receive these funds? Is that, you send them to only people that are eligible, or you send them to, it has to be that universe, is that correct?
Correct. And it may depend, looking beyond this specific contract. Some of the contracts that we have specific eligibility standards for the agencies we'll contract. So, we might not be willing to contract with for-profit entities for certain contracts. Maybe we only target nonprofit entities or municipalities. It depends on the RFP that we're issuing. We tailor the plan holders list to those specific services. Also, if it's a unique service that we know that vendor doesn't provide, or if, the vendor, if we make a phone call to confirm their contact information and they confirm, oh, that's not a service that we provide, we wouldn't necessarily send it out to them. So we do try and update those each time we do an RFP with correct addresses and contact information. And that's where we, kind of get some of those updates about the services that the vendors provide.
And thank you for that. And thank you for your patience with me asking these questions. If I can get a list of everybody that you're going to send it out to, in case I see somebody from my district or the district I have the privilege of representing that may not be on there. And I can say, oh, what about these folks, or have that entity reach out to you to say, hi, are we eligible? Because I just don't know the universe. And when I had the privilege of talking to the arts folks yesterday, they shared with me the list of the folks that they interact with in my district. And it was a lot more substantial than I thought it was. And it was a wonderful insight how much of an impact they have there. And I know your world has the same. So if I can see the list without, if it's not proprietary, I'd like to be able to look at it and, you know, share with folks. Hey, what about you? Could you fit in? Does that make some sense?
Absolutely. And I see Dan has come on video here. Dan, is there anything you'd like to add to that conversation?
Yes, I'm Dan Humphrey, the administrator of the contracting division for HHS. Paul, I just wanted to also confirm vendors are also able to register themselves as interested in providing certain services. So if there's entities that you know are interested or do provide the services, they can essentially pre-register with the procurement department so that when an RFP for those kinds of services is issued, they would be included as well. So sort of as a proactive measure, rather than having, you know, the advertisement goes out to vendors beyond those that we find. You can self-register as your interest as well.
Got it. And my last question, Madam Chairwoman.
Yes.
Thank you. It's a competitive process and there's a scoring. Is that accurate?
Absolutely, yes.
And then I don't know the history of the entities that have been receiving it and how long they've been receiving it for. And I'm familiar with many of them. They're wonderful, Applewood and Catholic Charities, and I can go on. But sometimes if there's a specific dollar amount that's eligible to be distributed, some folks get knocked off and some folks get put on. And I'm just wondering the question of a scoring system, and everybody will know about it. And it just makes for very tough decisions for you and Mr. Humphrey and your team to be able to make those decisions. And would it be what word do I want to use? The decision of to reduce everybody to get more in, or keep it at a higher level and eliminate some? How would you answer that question? Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I don't mean to make a tough question for you. That just came to my mind.
Absolutely. So it's a question that can be answered a couple of different ways. And your colleague, Chairwoman Conwell, actually helped with the review committee or observed a review committee a few years ago with the Division of Senior and Adult Services when we were going through kind of the exhaustive proposal evaluation process to rank and rate the proposals. We don't, commit to a certain dollar amount for each vendor ahead of time. That's decided at the very end of the process. Once we've identified which vendors were the highest scoring proposal wise, and with the RFPs we issue, funding is only a portion of the scoring for their total proposal. We evaluate everything from the model and design of the specific service they're proposing to deliver, to their prior experience delivering the service, and even, scores that they've gotten on evaluations from us, as well as other funders or accreditation entities in the past.
Wow, okay.
So we base it on kind of a wide spectrum. And there are cases when, good vendors score lower than other vendors and end up not getting a contract, but it's a dispassionate process. We look at just the raw scores that the vendors get when their proposals are evaluated. It's not based on who had a contract last year and they've got a better shot at getting one next year. It really is a clean slate evaluation process every time we do an RFP. For this one, the RFP was last conducted during calendar year 2018 for services to cover 19, 20, and 21. It's our anticipation when we issue another RFP that, again, it would lead to a multi-year contract like this.
Well, thank you. Extensive is the word that comes into mind, how you're going about your business. And to my colleagues, thank you for your patience with me, and I'm getting up to speed. So thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
You're welcome. Councilman Sweeney, the RFPs are about to, for the 3 year, they're basically for 3 years. It's about to open up again. So I would recommend any committee member joining that if they would like to see and fulfill and participate actually in the
Mhm.
process as well. And Paul, you can keep this committee updated when those will be coming out. He'll send a schedule, and you can just sit in on one and participate in one if you like. So that's always a helpful thing.
Thank you. It's awesome.
Any other questions from the committee?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Councilman Miller.
Thank you. To Mr. Porter first, could you send us an email after this meeting containing the list of the current providers?
Absolutely, will do.
And second, just wondering if the children that are being served under this program, are they mostly children who themselves or family members are involved in active DCFS cases, or are they mostly from families that are not DCF cases, or is it a mix?
Karen, I'd like to defer to you and call on your expertise to answer this because I think you'd be better equipped.
Hi, good afternoon. Excuse me, Karen Storman. And they are all families that are involved with the Division of Children and Family Services. Most of the services that are falling under this master contract are geared towards placement preservation. And that would describe families that are active with the agency. However, safety hasn't resulted in a removal from the home. A small percentage of the children that receive services under this contract are in the agency custody. For example, supported visitation, which encourages interaction with the family when they're visiting with their child, supporting them in that venue. But yes, to your question, all of the services are geared towards children and families that are involved with the agency.
Thanks very much.
Any other questions? I have one. Paul, have all the agencies been paid up to date that are listed on the contract?
Thank you, Chairwoman Conwell. Because the current agreement technically ended 12/31 of 2020, we won't be able to pay any invoices for January or February until this is approved. I'm confident, and I don't know that we have anybody from HHS Fiscal on the line that can say with certainty what the most recent payments were, but these contracts had funding through 12/31 of last year, so they should have been paid up to that point, and then they can be paid for services provided in January and February once this is approved.
Okay, so that determines that you need second reading suspension.
If we could, yes, please. Thank you.
All right, any final questions before we move this to the full committee? All right, hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to move this to the council of the whole, second reading suspension. Can I have a second?
Second, Miller.
Seconded by Miller. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Conwell, if I may.
Yes, Mr.
I just
Merriman.
want to acknowledge that, so David Merriman, Director of Health and Human Services, I do want to acknowledge that our staff want to appreciate your patience and your consideration on this item. We've come to realize not all staff have video cameras. And so there are times that in meetings like today, that staff are not able to have video. We've also found on occasion, if there are a great number of Zoom or Teams calls at the same time, we've had some connectivity issues. So, this is me apologizing if we call in as I did and we're not on video unless we're speaking. We've instructed our staff generally to stay on mute and off video to preserve the bandwidth. And but it's out of respect for you that I would also say that we do want to improve our ability to participate through video, and we're looking at that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, the next item is a presentation, correct?
Correct, by Dugan Center, yes.
All right, and who are the participants that will present to us today?
Mr. Kim from Dugan Center, and I believe we have Paul Herdick on the line also.
Hi, Councilwoman. It's Rick Kim.
All right, Director, you're up.
Hi.
Hi, Rick. This is Ashley. You can turn your camera on. I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Let me introduce my staff and the folks from the Dugan Center. Angela Vanucci, you could wave. She is, Angela is our board president here at the Dugan Center. She's been on the board for 7 years. She also is a resident of Ohio City and she works at the Eaton Corporation. Thank you, Angela, for joining us today. It's always important to have a member of our board. And we have Brenda Zaradakis, who serves as our development director and communications. And we have Andy Treris, who is the deputy director and oversees several of our programs here at the Dugan Center. I think I got everyone. Is Brian Dirtle on? I'm not sure. Anyway, Madam Chair.
Brian, yeah, Brian is wasn't sent the link. He's probably watching it live stream.
Very good. Well, we did put together a PowerPoint presentation. So in respect of your time, we will try to be as brief as possible and then save some time for questions and answers. So I'm Rick Kim. I've been at the Dugan Center and serve as the executive director for the past 12 years. Our mission is to help people enrich and advance their lives and communities. And we fulfill that mission through 6 core programs, which Brenda's going to talk about in more depth. But I wanted to give just a little bit of background about the Dugan Center. We were founded back in 1969 as the Near West Side Multi-Service Corporation, but we do business in honor of the late May Dugan, who was an awesome advocate for the poor, going all the way back to the late 1920s. She was the daughter of Irish immigrants, and her parents had settled here in the Ohio City neighborhood. And so she helped a lot of the Irish immigrants settle and find jobs. She fed them, she clothed them. So kind of today, we're still living her legacy through the programs that we offer today. She continued to be an advocate for the poor, going all the way back from the 1920s up until the late 1960s. It was about the time when President Johnson launched the war on poverty. And one of his first initiatives was to release an RFP to cities that had large pockets of poverty. So the city of Cleveland, in partnership with some residents from the Near West Side neighborhoods, including former Congresswoman Mary Rose Okar, worked with the city to complete an application to build multi-service centers. So that's how this center evolved. And we've been located here on the corner of 41st and Bridge since 1975. Prior to that, we were down the street for 4 or 5 years. But when the doors opened, May Dugan took control in partnership with the city of Cleveland to manage the building. So we've been managing this building since the doors opened. We only pay $1 a year to the city of Cleveland, but it's a triple net lease. So we're responsible for any repairs or any work that has to be done to the building. And believe it or not, very little work has been done to the building since the doors opened. Our major systems, the HVAC system, the roof, the windows, plumbing, electrical, it's all original. So we've had multiple issues with the building over the past 12 years that I've been here. However, the city was awarded money to build this facility, as well as one in the Huff neighborhood, which I'm not sure if it still operates as a multi-service center. But anyway, that's the background on May Dugan. It's a wonderful facility. Again, we've been an anchor on this corner for the past 47 years. People know where to come for help. You're going to be enlightened by some of the statistics that Brenda's going to share with you about our programs, and especially during this pandemic. We've been here, a handful of our 44 employees, to ensure that people who lost their jobs, people who have low incomes, and people who have mental health or substance use disorders know where to come for help. And we've done a tremendous job during the pandemic. So Brenda?
Thank you, Rick, and thank you, everyone, for allowing us to make this presentation. You know, I just want to start with what we're looking at with regard to a poverty rate in Cleveland, and Cleveland's near poverty rate is 35% 35.9% of a poverty rate, and then a near poverty of 61.2%. Dugan Center is located right in Ohio City, and in a neighborhood that oftentimes is seen as a renaissance, at least pre-pandemic, but we still are facing high poverty in this particular location and the communities that we serve. As Rick had said, we are a health and human service agency that has been around since 1969. We are known for quickly adapting to the changing needs of our clients and our community, and we are a leader in trauma-informed environments, and our center subscribes to substance abuse and mental health service administration's trauma-informed protocols. We are also a partner agency or a member agency of the Adams Board, providing behavioral health, and I'll get into that in a little bit. As Rick said, our mission is to help people enrich and advance their lives and communities, and we fulfill that mission through our 6 core programs. And all of our core programs are addressing all of these challenges that our community faces. The 6 core programs treat the person holistically and remove barriers in a manner that is sensitive to trauma, and it affords access to behavioral health and case management, adult education, and victim services for people who are living at or near poverty and are low and moderate income people. Our programs are: we have behavioral health services, which includes our newest components of substance use disorder, IOPs, as well as our brand new mental health IOP, which was just launched yesterday. And both of those are serving this SUD portion of it came about because of the horrible opioid pandemic or epidemic that has ravaged our city, our county, and our state. The mental health piece came about also because of the gaps in services for people struggling with mental health issues. And this is an immersion in a type of an opportunity to serve people that were not able to find services elsewhere. And we provide both these services, and we have bilingual ability with these services. We are certified through the Ohio Department of Mental Health Services, and we work closely with that particular department. We are CARF accredited, so we are accredited by the Commission of Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities, and we just received our most recent CARF accreditation. Moving on to other programs, we have our Adult Education Resource Center and Workforce Development Program. We also have our Moms First, which is a case management and support for pregnant and parenting teens. We have 2 basic needs programs that work together here at Dugan Center. It's our food, clothing, and fresh produce program and our health and wellness program. Pre-pandemic, our food, clothing, and fresh produce provided 2 distributions in a month, one being a full food, clothing, and fresh produce, the second being a produce only. Since the pandemic, we have been providing a drive-through distribution twice a month on a Wednesday, the 2nd and 4th Wednesday. On the 2nd and 4th Thursday, it's a walk-up by appointment for people who do not have a vehicle. And then the Friday, 2nd and 4th Friday of each month, we provide delivery for people who are at high risk of COVID, as well as our senior population. Just to give you a little bit of stats around that, just so that you can understand the hard work that's been happening here at Dugan Center with our food program. We are right now, as we understand it, the 2nd largest food distribution in the city. We've served 412,000 meals to over 19,000 people, which translates to 6,000 families in 2020. That's a 204% increase from 2019. The second part of our basic needs is our health and wellness program. Pre-pandemic, it focused on preventive health screenings for people to alleviate emergency needs, medical needs for people. Our clients were able to come in during our food distributions and get their glucose measured, their blood pressure taken, and understand where their health was. On many occasions in the last several years, people have had to go to the emergency room because we identified their blood pressure being so high, it was a danger. But since COVID, we have not been able to do the in-person due to the social constraints, but we have pivoted that program, that piece of that program, to really focus on our aging adults. And so that particular program, we've been making sure that our aging adults are safe during this pandemic, have engaged with them through Zoom, and we have been providing food and social connection for them. Our final program is our Trauma Recovery Center, which is the only community-based trauma recovery center in the city of Cleveland at this time. And during this particular period, during this pandemic, crime has risen. And we've taken on more responsibility and clients around victim services. We provide crisis stabilization for those clients as they come in, and then we also work with them through the judicial system to ensure that they receive the justice that they deserve. And we work very, very closely with the 4th District Police Department and receive most of our referrals directly from detectives. This allows us to be at a victim's bedside or in their home or at their very side within hours of victimization. And we can begin the process of ensuring that they have housing, shelter, food, that their employer is notified if that needs to be the case, that their children are taken care of, just to really make sure all of those type of needs are taken care of and the victim can focus on getting well. At this point, I want to pass the baton over to Andy Traer so that he can go in a little bit more about some of the impact of our organization. But before I do that, I do think it's really important for you to understand that during this pandemic, our agency remained operating and continued to serve people in need. We never closed our doors. The food program is a dynamic example, and just an example of our ability to retool, analyze the logistics, implement a plan, and ensure that the people get the help they need. With all of that being said, I want to thank all of you for your leadership during this really very difficult time. And I'm handing it over to Andy to talk about our impact and some specifics around our facilities.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as Brenda mentioned, from our 6 core programs pre-pandemic, we were serving over 6,000 people each year. Obviously, that has increased during the pandemic because of our food services. And while we anticipate that post-pandemic, those numbers will come back down, we're planning for it landing somewhere in the middle, that we'll be serving more than 6,000 people into the future. And so prior to the pandemic, we were serving folks from throughout Cuyahoga County, from 64 different zip codes. But since we've entered the pandemic and are coming up on a year of the pandemic, some quick stats for that. For our food distribution program, through kind of where we're at today, we have served over 7,000 families, over 450,000 meals. As Brenda mentioned, we're already at a tripling of our food program, and we're on track within probably by the end of next week, we'll have provided 500,000 meals in the past year. And so those families have come from all over. While we were pulling from about 64 zip codes pre-pandemic, in the past year, we've served people from 121 different zip codes, as you can see from the map there. And in addition to that, we've also made 1,500 food deliveries. Food delivery was a new program for us. And then we are still serving between 750 to 800 families each round of distribution. And actually, these numbers continue to stay high and are actually higher than they were last summer. And so as the pandemic has lagged, we've actually seen our numbers go up slightly than they did even in those first few months. Next. So shifting gears to our facility here at the Dugan Center. As Rick mentioned, that the facility itself is owned by the city of Cleveland and opened its doors in 1975. Because of the initial funding, the city of Cleveland owns the facility, but we've had long-term leases with them since the doors opened. And so it's a public-private partnership that we have with them. And while we pay $1 a year for the rent, we are responsible for all of the maintenance costs and all of the capital costs as well. And so in addition to the building itself currently is about 28,000 square feet. We occupy probably about a third of that, including common space. But then we also rent out space to other organizations. And so as a multi-service center, we house Neighborhood Family Practice has their administrative offices here. Neighborhood Family Practice being a federally qualified health center that has clinics throughout the west side of Cleveland. We also have Cuyahoga County Adult Probation Office. There are about 12 probation officers that work here in the building. They've been here for 20, 30 years at this point. And they occupy a suite on the second floor. We also have COGC has their HEAP office here. And so folks are able to receive utility assistance through that program as well. Pre-pandemic, we would also host a lot of community meetings, various groups and whatnot as well. So looking at our organization in total, our budget has increased. And so we're at $2.7 million budget each year, 44 staff members with an annual payroll of just under $2.3 million. So one note on the staff increase is that, as Brenda was mentioning when describing our programs and how we've added to our programming over the years. So since 2017 to today, our staff has almost doubled. So we were at about 23, 24 staff members at the beginning of 2017, and now we're at 44. So our building doors opened in 75, but we are coming up on the end of the useful life or have passed the end of the useful life of many of the major systems, particularly HVAC. Our various systems throughout the building continue to have issues. Every fall, our boiler has a very difficult time turning on for the first time. And so, as well as we've had burst pipes, the air conditioning unit went out a couple summers ago, and we had to have that replaced to the tune of $20,000, including bringing a crane to lift it on top of the third-story building. And then we have many leaks throughout the building just because of the aging roof. And in addition, pretty much all of the systems are showing their age. In addition to the major systems, we also have our space is not really designed for how we're using it pre-pandemic and especially today. That it was designed for service delivery 50 years ago. Service delivery has changed a lot, and we really feel like this is a great opportunity to adapt the space for modern service delivery, so that we can move forward into the future in providing services to the community. Then at this point, I'm going to hand it back to Rick to talk about our specific campaign and the project.
Hi again. So we have a very dedicated board of directors. We have 19 active board members right now. They're all involved with 4 of our standing committees, one of them being our building committee, which is chaired by Frank Morrell, who does a lot of construction. But anyway, we've been going back and forth for several years now. And back in late 2017, the board of directors finally approved to move forward with the exploration of a feasibility study. So we went to the Cleveland Foundation and they provided us with a grant, which had 2 components. One, to hire a fundraising consultant who would conduct a feasibility study. And also the other component was to hire an architect firm to do an assessment on the building. So what we learned from the feasibility study, and she interviewed approximately 32 entities, both local foundations, some government entities, and individuals. And we learned that we can generate about $3.5 million. Then we hired an architectural firm, Dugan Architects, and they came in and did an initial assessment. And we learned that we would, in order to fix up the building, it's structurally sound, but again, all the systems, need to be replaced, that we would probably need to generate about $5.5 million. Of course, we wanted to raise more to do a larger expansion, but we had to eliminate that. So we had generous support from the Cleveland Foundation to get us where we are today. Next slide, Brenda. Yeah, so pre-pandemic, we were predicting to provide an additional 15,000 more meals. Things are changing now drastically because of the pandemic, but we're hoping to expand our food distribution with a brand new pantry, a brand new kitchen, in storage space. We want to have a walk-in cooler, which we don't have. Our current kitchen is just pathetic, to be honest with you. Our behavioral health programming, during the pandemic, we provided services to 521 individuals unduplicated. And by the way, we are a member of the Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board of Cuyahoga County, which I served on for 7 years. But we're hoping to increase our capacity by over 200 more clients. And I think we actually can exceed that number because of the expansion of our substance use disorder program. Our building needs to be compliant with the ADA requirements. Right now, the doors are not as wide as they should be, but some of the benefits is that we're going to have our administrative offices will finally be together, because right now we're fragmented. I'm on one side of the building, Brenda in the finance department on another side of the building. So we really like to be together. We anticipate increasing our revenue through more program expansion. As Brenda mentioned, we're CARF accredited and certified through the State of Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, which enables us to build for our eligible units of service. So that is one of our revenue streams. And of course, we just are really looking forward to an improved and modern building. When you see the slide of the schematic from Bialowski Architects, who we're working with now, all of the clinicians will be together, and we're going to be able to add approximately 10 more offices, and they'll be soundproof, which they are not right now. But we broke this down into 3 priority areas. Number one, we want to get the building systems replaced and updated, which includes a new HVAC system. Right now, we have multiple units, some up on the roof that Andy referred to. When that compressor broke, we had to pay a couple $1,000s just to bring in a big crane. The elevators need to be updated, the roof, etc. Priority number 2 is to reconfigure the existing space so that we meet current programmatic needs and have the ability to expand our programs. And number 3 would be to expand the building. We don't have a large multi-purpose room, so pre-pandemic, when we would have over 300 people in the building for food day, they would all be gathered in the building, and it was pretty dangerous. So that beautiful room that you see up on the top of this slide would be the only addition to the existing building. It would be a large space, and you'll see behind it, there's additional room space, larger conference rooms. Anyways, it's a beautiful concept. Next slide. So our Anticipator Revenue, our goal is to generate $5.6 million. We're hoping, right now we've had much success actually from local foundations. The Cleveland Foundation loves May Dugan. They've been supporting us for the past 12 years that I've been here. They waived their requirement of 50%, that we have to raise 50% of our goal, which enabled us to leverage additional funding from the Gunn Foundation, the Reinberger Family Foundation, the Higley Fund. And so as of today, we're at about $2.2 million. We will be going public to generate additional funds, but we're hoping to get 11% from individuals, 13% from the corporate community, 15% from the government funds. And we also are working with Betsy Figge, who is a guru in the new market tax credits. And so our anticipated expenses, just kind of look at that real quick. The soft costs are 12%. Our priority number 3, 17, 1 and 2 is 66%. Brenda? So we've been really grateful for our campaign leadership. Right now, we have Justin Carson from the Platform Brewery, Pete Snavely from Snavely Group, and I don't want to read them all, but we have Councilwoman Yvonne Conwell, and we have 4 city council folks, including Council President Kevin Kelly, Councilwoman Jasmine Santana, who is a former member of our board of directors, our own city councilman from Ohio City, Carrie McCormick, and former Matt Zone. We will be recruiting his successor, Jenny Spencer, but it's a great committee that's working very diligently to see this all come to fruition. So I believe the next one is questions and answers. Again, I want to thank you for your time. This is really important to May Dugan. And Madam Chair, thank you for your leadership, and to all the other county council folks.
Okay, thank you, Director Kim. I just wanted to let your team know that all HHS committee members currently on this committee share some part of the city of Cleveland within their districts, so they are aware of the many needs some of their residents need. And I know you reach out to primarily, you probably touch parts of all of their districts. So it just lined up like that. It wasn't planned, but those are the committee members that are on there. So the reason this presentation was brought to you was to share with my colleagues that I've been trying to work with the Department of Development, and I hope that Paul Herdick is on the call. I've been trying to work with Director Carter in regards to what do we do for some of our failing infrastructures in our nonprofit agencies that does such great work in all of our districts. We definitely need, the need is out there, but we can't have people, coming into buildings that are falling apart. So what do we do? I know this particular center, and we all have these kind of nonprofits within our districts, but this particular center has a different caveat by it being a shared partnership with the city of Cleveland. So the city of Cleveland is definitely putting in their portion or something in regards to this project. But projects such as these really can only rely on this for capital improvements from the state capital bill. And they did try, and they were not successful in getting those funds and private donations. So I've been trying to work with Ted Carter, or have a conversation. We've had a conversation pre-pandemic in regards to the needs that these type of agencies are facing. What can we do in the county to come up with a program to assist the nonprofits that are throughout our various districts? And I thought right now we currently do not have anything that they fall in under any of our programs. And I would like Paul to share what we currently have. But this is the reason that I invited them to share, because not only this center, but like I said, many other nonprofit agencies within your districts, I'm sure has some need or some issues in regards to capital improvements. So Paul, if you could share us what we presently have available at the county currently.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, members of council. Grateful for the opportunity to come here today and speak with you. We had the opportunity to have a very deep discussion with Mr. Kim and understand in very good detail, as you've heard today, the vision that they have, the need for capital improvements. And certainly over the past year, as we've worked through the pandemic and have been both directly in touch with many nonprofit agencies, and also we've been informed by discussions with the leadership of Health and Human Services, who has an even closer connection to many of the nonprofits, of the particular stress, financial stress that's been put upon many nonprofits because of the pandemic, both in terms of decreased revenue and also certain increased costs they've had to adapt to the pandemic. And it's certainly the case that the older infrastructure and the older buildings in many of our social service organizations, many of which date back to the war on poverty in the 1960s or even earlier, is a need to be met. I'd like to very briefly review some of the things we looked at with May Dugan to try to see how existing programs might meet their needs. We took a look to see if the Opportunity Zones tax advantage might be available to leverage perhaps some investment in the project by a investor seeking social impact. This is one thing that the Opportunity Zone initiative, which came out of Congress on a bipartisan basis, may be able to help with. Unfortunately, May Dugan lies on the wrong side of the street, literally the wrong side of the street. When the lines were drawn for opportunity zones on that part of Cleveland. The census tract across the street was included, but not the one that May Dugan was in. So unfortunately, for this particular project, the opportunity zone would not be an option. Although for other buildings located in the city of Cleveland, even some of the suburbs, there are quite a few areas where that might be an option. And we in development would welcome the chance to work with specific projects to see if that could be a fit. We actually invested some county funds with a fund called Arcturus, which can make these kind of opportunity zone investments, including in community serving facilities. So that is one option, unfortunately not for May Dugan, but maybe in other cases. One thing we do have to offer and have used many times in the past is the ability to issue tax-exempt bonds on behalf of a nonprofit. And while this is not a huge financial contribution, it can be beneficial in that the issuance of tax-exempt bonds does two things. First of all, it to some extent lowers the borrowing costs for a project, but secondly, it can sometimes unlock a special kind of tax credits called 4% tax credits. Excuse me one second. Forgive me. So we've been successful in the past in other projects in working with nonprofits to issue the tax-exempt bonds. And again, we understand not every project is particularly suited to that, but it's an option we do have available. Really, I think the crux of the problem is that the money that sits in the county's economic development fund, which is part of the county budget, is specifically designed, and the programs are specifically designed to support job-creating private businesses. So over the years that since the Economic Development Fund has been created, it has been used multiple times a year to fund economic development projects, typically private projects, which do create new jobs and also retain jobs. But these are loans, not grants, and the emphasis is on the job creation. What we've discussed with some nonprofits, including May Dugan and also others, is that we may be able to adapt some of these lending programs to consider a nonprofit as a business, because nonprofits are businesses. We would have to underwrite the loan in the same way we would underwrite a loan for a private for-profit business. And we'd want to see the connection to job creation, just as we do with a private business. We recognize well that these particular programs do not meet, and were not designed to meet, a need for grant funding, for essentially a capital campaign. And we recognize this is a limitation of the Economic Development Fund, but that is the purpose for which it was created. It has specific programs that have been adopted under it. So in summary, I would say we always welcome the chance to put on our thinking caps and work with any project, private, nonprofit, public, to see how we might be able to connect that project with the best available sources of funding, use all the tools available. But I must honestly and directly say that at this particular time, the money in the county's Economic Development Fund is not really an appropriate source for contributing to a capital campaign. I will be happy to entertain any questions on this.
All right. Does any of my colleagues have any questions? Or does anyone from May Dugan have any questions? Mr. Sweeney, Councilman
One quick
Sweeney?
question. This is Rick. Paul, would the loan that you were talking about, would those be forgivable loans? Are you aware?
Right. Thank you, Councilman, for the question. Some of the loan programs that we operate do have the opportunity for partial forgiveness, and this is always part of the program design. This is not done on a case-by-case basis. I will give a very recent example. On Monday of this week, the Economic Development Committee, chaired by Councilman Tron, and I know I see a couple faces here that also attend the Economic Development meetings, reviewed and gave its recommendation to a loan for the Warner Swayze project. This is a project that's going to redevelop the long vacant Warner and Swayze factory on Carnegie into an affordable housing project with some first floor office spaces. The type of loan that was approved for that project carries a 25% forgiveness. It's called a redevelopment modernization loan. And so in situations where vacant property is being returned to use, loans can be partially forgivable. Loans have also been made in situations where a corporate headquarters was being brought into the county with a significant number of very well-paid jobs, and where there's a program that's been available to allow some forgiveness in those cases based on the bringing into the county of the number of new well-paid jobs, which increases the tax revenue. So yes, there are certain programs that allow partial forgiveness. And again, we've tried to see the fit here and so far haven't been able to find that fit.
Thank you, Paul.
And Paul, just a correction for the record, that was Director Kim that was speaking, not Councilman Sweeney. Thank you, Councilman Sweeney, for allowing our guests to go first. So Councilman Sweeney.
Sorry.
It's always guests first, Madam Chairwoman. I want to give my colleagues the opportunity to answer questions first, but I'd love to hear from the board president. I had the privilege of talking with her the other day, Angela Vanucci. She's on here. She has the passion and the caring, and she's a volunteer. So if I might hear a couple comments from you, and then I have a series of questions after my colleagues. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. If that's okay with the president, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yes, no, thank you, Councilman Sweeney. I appreciate it. Again, thanks to everyone for giving us the opportunity to present today. I think you can see that, you know, there is obviously a need for the services that we're providing. And I think through the numbers that we reported out, you can see that the number has certainly increased last year, but even prior to the pandemic, you know, we were having greater enrollment in all of our programs. So not going away. With regards to the building, you know, we're trying to be creative, looking for ways to fund that. As someone who's served in the May Dugan Center leadership for the past few years, you know, we do a great job budgeting and thinking about our programming and our foundation support and our government support and our income, and we get to balanced. And then, you know, there's always this fear where in the middle of the night or first thing one morning, Rick calls and says, you know, a compressor's down and we have to spend $20,000 to fix it. And as a nonprofit, we just don't have, you know, this money lying around. And we're a very lean organization. We operate on a very tight budget, and we've kind of pushed off, you know, the capital campaign as long as we could. So we're reaching out to as many entities as we can, and appreciate you hearing about our needs. I guess one question I would have about the job creation is also thinking about, you know, the different types of work we do around jobs. One of our programs is training adults to become job force ready and actually helping them find living wage jobs. And each year, I forget our exact numbers last year, but I think the year before we placed something like 75 people or something in livable wage jobs. So we are, you know, looking towards economic security for the population in, you know, the city of Cleveland. And it is a focus for us, not to mention the amount of jobs that we've expanded within our own staff and what we're looking to do with the construction project that we're going towards. So I'm just trying to be creative, but I thank you all for your willingness to hear us and your support as well.
All right, any questions from any other committee members besides Sweeney? He's allowing you to go first. Hearing none, go ahead, Sweeney.
I am far from allowing anybody to do anything, Madam Chairwoman. I was just talking way too much, and I have the privilege of having May Dugan Center in the district that I represent. So I just might talk a little bit here if you don't mind. So thank you to my chairwoman and my colleagues. I can't say enough about the May Dugan Center. I've known it since the September 24th, 1990, when I became a Cuyahoga County probation officer, and always try to get over to the May Dugan Center, the West Side satellite office. So it's like the cream of the crop to have your office there instead of the Justice Center. And if you think about the tenants they have, they're all quality tenants, and they just continue to their mission that's focused in it. So they have the heat program, which is low income heating. We have the neighborhood family practice, who's just expanding throughout the city, and their mission is just incredible. And then you have the Cuyahoga County probation officer, adult probation officers. And what I always believed is our job as a probation officer is to help folks get back into the quality of life and the mainstream instead of just going back to prison. And the West Side office does that well. So that's my history here. So I have a familiarity with it. But it all boils down to right now, they didn't ask for anything, but I am. They're going to need $500,000 as we move forward to continue this facility, basically, that's owned by the city, and the city's going to do their part, but the contract says $1, and that's what they get. So I don't think they get anything else with the triple net lease. It's just, we'll give it to you for $1, which sounds attractive, but all the expenses goes onto the Dugan Center, and it is not the responsibility of the city of Cleveland, even though they own it. So that's it sounds good for $1, but there's other complications in regards to making it work. So it's maybe not that attractive. And I don't feel like I'm making a speech to you, but I just want to give you my thoughts on this, because I had the privilege of talking to the executive director and the president the other day, and Mr. Dirtle, and I was enlightened even more about this capital campaign. So I'm going to jump in on this. And to Paul, in my previous days, there's a dollar amount needed through the chair. We don't care how we get to that dollar amount. And we talk about funds eligible or ineligible. I'd like to figure out what is eligible and how to go about doing that. And when the city of Cleveland, Mr. Ebersol, and the Cuyahoga County and the state of Ohio through Governor DeWine's northern office person, I don't know their name and I apologize for that, and Jobs Ohio all get together and start thinking about something, wonderful things happen. So coming up with the $500,000 is a thought process of having everybody work, and hopefully the county would be the point on that. Madam Chairwoman, to Paul, can you make any comments on that?
Thank you, Councilman Sweeney. I apologize for my ineptness at Zoom, but I think I've got the correct person I'm answering now. So thank you, Councilman.
Oh, no, I don't. I'm good.
Very seriously, what we do is try to work together with partners creatively to try to find ways to do what needs to be done. So we are delighted to continue that work in partnership with May Dugan and any other applicable parties. What we need to do, though, is understand that we need to work within the rules of our program, and there are many, and they are constantly evolving. And it may be that as we monitor the new federal stimulus programs, other things may be available or at the state level. So we will pledge to continue to work very actively to try to identify funding sources that might be brought to bear to meet this need.
And absolutely. And we know, you know, the county stuff inside and out, and you're the subject matter expert, Madam Chair, to Paul. But a driving force, right? And since it's in Cuyahoga County, it's in the city of Cleveland also, but I have the privilege of being the council representative here. So I'm going to ask the county to take the lead on this, to work with the state of Ohio to find out what eligible sources could be there, even though the county may not have any. And then with the city of Cleveland, what funds could be there, even though they're out of the opportunity zone. And can we change the opportunity zone every 10 years? And are we in the 50 year? Just like a lot of work. In Jobs Ohio, do we fall anywhere in the Jobs Ohio world for a capital? We know the capital bill and the state house is come and gone, and there was no dollar. So check that one off or X that one out. So it's just working with the May Dugan Center is wonderful, but that's just on a treadmill or a gerbil wheel. But because they don't have the connectability to the other funding sources that are out there. And I'm only talking about the public's dollars that could be out there. So if you don't mind, Mr. Carter and you and me and whoever, I wouldn't mind participating and pushing that a little further. Is that something that wouldn't bother you too much?
Councilman, we will absolutely, your support will be invaluable in this effort, and we will move forward on this expeditiously. And
thank you. And it's not gonna, it's me expeditiously, but it's gonna be a journey. And then this is what the capital campaign is. And to my colleagues, the chairwoman was very specific, and each one of us that are on the committee, it touches our districts intimately. But when you say 121 zip codes, I imagine the breadth of touches almost throughout the entire county. Would that be accurate, Director?
In terms of zip codes, it's a very large segment, and it's certainly the case that clients come from many different locations, including some of the suburbs. So it's not just a city of Cleveland issue.
Okay, baby.
Yeah, Paul, I thank you for that answer. Madam Chairwoman, to the Director Kim, is that how big's the footprints with that 121? Or to Brenda or to Andy, I'm sorry.
So we it depends on the program, but for example, our trauma recovery
Just the
center,
121 zip codes. That's all I'm asking about. Is that most of the county or half the county or just in Cleveland?
Yes.
most of the county.
Yeah, most of the counties. That's the point I'm trying to drive home. And I'll end this here. First and most importantly, it's a wonderful resource for everybody in the Cuyahoga County, and just to be able to push people there and just gain the benefit of the Dugan Center. And not everybody knows that it's there. So once this gets promoted more, I think your numbers are going to just increase more and more. And to have a facility that can handle it is just going to be something that's necessary. So, and then it's just the funding right now. You have a $500,000 gap that I see that needs to be filled by public dollars. That is part of your equation. And that's why they're here. And I don't mean to be, I'm just being rather blunt, Madam Chairwoman, and I'm sorry if I'm going too far here. But I think the county council and the county executive and every other entity should, try to figure out a way to help. So Madam Chairwoman, thank you for letting me be a little bit direct today, a little bit more than normal, but I happen to have the privilege of representing them. And I look forward to getting over to the Dugan Center in this official capacity and meet the director, Brendan, Andy, and if Angela's there, that'd be wonderful. And I can see it firsthand, which I'm going to do relatively soon. So thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you.
Thank you, my colleague, Mr. Sweeney. As Paul stated, and I'm all about equity and fairness. Yes, Dugan Center is directly within my district boundaries, but it's not just about them. It's about the equity and fairness of all the nonprofit agencies. This is why I think that instead of trying to maybe skirt the parameters that the Economic Development Fund has done, is that we add to it and we change it legally, legislatively, to incorporate funding for capital improvements for not only the Dugan Center, but to give all the nonprofits throughout our colleagues' districts an opportunity to be able to utilize those funds. So that is my goal, and I look forward to working with you, Sweeney, on pushing this matter further in the Department of Development. I've had one conversation with Mr. Chief Mason, and look to have many more. So I would like to open it up for one final round of questions. We do have another presentation today. Anything else from Dugan Center that would like to ask us, or vice versa?
I think we're good, unless Andy or Brenda or Angela have anything else. But I want to thank you, everybody, Madam Chair and fellow council members and staff, for your time. It's been an honor to be able to present to you today.
Thank you. Thank you for all taking time out of your busy schedules and presenting to us. We know it's a great need out there, and we are trying to figure out creative solutions to help not only you, but as I stated, all nonprofit agencies that are suffering right now.
Thank you. We appreciate
thank you.
Okay.
There you guys.
Madam Clerk, we have one more presentation today.
Yes, that's the opioid settlement fund update from Brandy.
Right. All right, Brandy, are you here with your team?
I'm the team today, Councilwoman, but
right.
it's just
The I in team.
that right today. But thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. So, and good afternoon to the rest of the council members. Brandy Carney, Chief of Special Operations for the county. And nice to meet you, Councilman Sweeney, for the first time. Glad to
Nice
have you on
meeting you as well.
board. Yes.
All right, I felt before Brandy's deputy administrator starts to speak that it was very important that the committee that we sit on, that we get an update about the opioid settlement. I know she sometimes gives updates in the public safety committee as well, but a few organizations have reached out to me in terms of how do they get a part of this funding. And so it's behooves us to have an open and transparent forum for them to hear what is going on, the updates that we're at so far, and a brief previous history of how we got here. So I now turn it over to you, Brandy.
Sure. Thank you again, Woman Conwell. I have a little discussion I'll provide here. Hopefully I'll be able to answer the questions that were at least provided me thus far. And then obviously I'm open to any and all questions from the group. So as discussed, I was asked today to provide an update on the opioid funds following the opioid litigation, of which we, along with Summit County, were a bellwether county, as all of you know, in 2019, and that litigation ended at the end of 2019. The county, following the settlement terms of the opioid litigation from 19, the county reported we did receive $179 million in settlement terms. The total cash settlement amount we received was $117 million. The difference includes attorney fees and expenses, a court-ordered 7.5% holding in escrow, as well as additional in-kind services. So I was asked about the difference in cost. The $117 million approximately is the direct cash funding we've received to date. As all of you well know, the funding received as part of the settlement was one-time funding. As such, we've been particularly mindful of its use and distribution. Of the $117 million received, an initial $23 million was provided to entities and projects identified by county administration and county council in late 2019 to begin to immediately address local needs in response to the terrible opioid epidemic. These projects began last year, 2020, and are continuing. The entities which received those initial $23 million in funds provide quarterly updates and metrics to the county on each of their projects. In addition to situational awareness and identification of successes, these metrics will be used to assess the future need from each of the recipients for future funding. Most of the projects were given funding for 2 years. So beginning in 2022, many will be asking for additional sustainment. Many of these projects include staff brought on, not just one-time cost. The $23 million addresses what has been referred to as phase 1 of the opioid funding. In addition to the $23 million, other projects have been funded from the opioid fund to date, which many of you know and is an amazing and passionate project of mine currently. It includes our Diversion Center contract, which was approximately a $10 million contract that was approved by council recently. The Diversion Center project is transformative for Cuyahoga County and is intended to provide treatment and care to individuals with addiction, as well as mental health needs. And this is in lieu of jail, as many of you know. The Diversion Center opportunity allows an individual to have their underlying issue directly addressed in response to a nonviolent crime, but in an environment that is best suited for care and for the amount of time that is most appropriate, rather than spending that time in our jail facility. The opportunity to not have a criminal record, but get the treatment and care someone needs significantly improves the likeliness for an individual to maintain a long-term recovery and be integrated into society with the tools and care they need. Because of the opioid funding, and it was one time that we received, the diversion project was identified as a primary use for opioid funding. Unfortunately, we cannot receive the many requests we've received. I can tell you that I alone have received over $150 million worth of requests, but the high cost of implementing and sustaining a project such as a diversion center in Cuyahoga County may have not ever been possible without this opportunity of funding. We are expecting to use $60 million or more of the opioid cash settlement funding for our diversion center. This number includes up to 5 years of operational costs, as well as money for capital needs. This is obviously a lion's share of the funds received, but immediately and specifically addresses the opioid epidemic and care for treatment and recovery. And just as a side note, many of you know that we are expecting an opening of our diversion center in April. So very soon here, April 2020. As also in addition to the diversion center project and the $23 million, $5 million was provided to Metro Health for their new facility on the east side of the county, which also addresses opioid and mental health population, just as diversion does. That project was approved by council late last year. Currently, I do have an RFP out for supplemental, aftercare services for our diversion center. The primary purpose of the current RFP is for identifying treatment for providers to send individuals to for continuation of their recovery services after their 5 to 7 days are spent on site at our diversion center. It also, however, the RFP also includes a component which local addiction and mental health providers can request one-time opioid funding. And that's specific to the diversion project. At this point, there may be significant amount of potential requests we received, but this is the opportunity for local nonprofits and others with the direct nexus to diversion priority for our funding to immediately address needs from the opioid epidemic. Those responses are due later this month. I think the final date for that RFP, it closes on March 10th. And so soon thereafter, myself, we should receive all of the requests from that RFP. As I mentioned, there are other requests that far exceed the opioid funds we received. For example, the 2 other major hospital systems in Cuyahoga County have recently convened together and have asked to meet regarding a request for opioid funds that they will be making. It does have a nexus to diversion, our diversion priority. There have also been many other requests that, as I said, I've received and we've received, but again, for this one-time funding. The Cleveland Foundation additionally has recently approved a grant to provide money for a consultant. That consultant is looking into the idea of the possibility of an investment fund for remaining funds. So that may be an opportunity to expand beyond the one-time cash fund that I've spoke about, but again, that's all very preliminary. Any request or use of these funds will obviously be brought to council to address the questions about, transparency. I hope I addressed the initial questions you had, but I'm happy to take any and all questions from council.
I would like to open it up to any of my colleagues that have any questions for Brandy. She's answered many of the ones that I sent in and provided for her.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Madam Chair, to Ms. Carney, the RFP that you currently have underway that closes on March 10th for the diversion center related aftercare services, what's the dollar amount on that RFP?
Through the council, or through the councilwoman, to Councilman Miller, there is not a dollar amount attached to that RFP currently because of the fact that it really has 2 components. So as I mentioned, there's a component as far as bed facilities and the request for bed facilities for our diversion center expansion services, and then a separate allowing one-time requests from these providers to come in for a capital or other one-time cost. So I do not have a cost attached to that RFP at the current moment.
And Madam Chair, to Ms. Carney, if you take the original $117 million and you subtract out the 60 million that's expected to be spent on the diversion center and the 5 million that was provided to Metro Health for their new facility, and you subtract out the 23 million for the phase 1 programs, and anything else that's already been allocated, how much money is there left that's unallocated?
So to Councilman Miller, your question, there is approximately 20 to 25 million, but again, that does not include what could come back out of the current RFP services. It doesn't include some of the other requests that the upcoming requests that we as a county expect to receive, as well as things such as the development fund that I briefly spoke about. So, but there's approximately $20 million.
Okay. One other thing is that I would just like to make you aware. I know you're aware that the location for the permanent diversion center is still a matter of discussion and controversy. And the administration sent over a request to spend $2.5 million to do some essential work on the old juvenile justice center. But the problem I have with that is that if we go ahead and do that, then people are going to say, that we've put this money into the old juvenile justice center, so we got to get something for our investment, and so we want to locate the diversion center there. And I and a lot of folks in the community continue to have concerns about that, and so I'm just telling you that we need to have a fair process, an open discussion. We need to look at alternatives, and that we need to come to a decision one way or the other soon on the permanent location for the diversion center, so that we just don't do this piecemeal, one step at a time, and force us into a decision of having to do something without really having a choice.
Thank you, Councilman. I agree on a process, and ideally we need to identify what's going to be the best place for a diversion center permanently in Cuyahoga County. If I could just briefly add that, as you know, the juvenile justice site is a site that we own, and so there's some fairly significant remediation and mitigation costs that have to be done to the site regardless. I would just also add that over the last year, myself and others in the county, including Chief of Staff Mason and others, have spent some significant time looking at locations throughout the county, and there's some, and I understand that there's some difference in opinion, but there's some really great benefits to location and the amount of space at somewhere like juvenile justice, and ingress and egress opportunities there, and proximity to transportation and public transportation, as well as highway transportation. So it's definitely a discussion that we all need to get on board on and support. But there's a lot of benefits, and there's not a lot of sites like that throughout Cuyahoga County that I would add, particularly that we own. But your comments are noted, sir.
So, Ms. Carney, to follow up on that, are there any other sites other than the old Juvenile Justice Center that the administration is actively considering, or is this an issue on which you have your minds made up?
I don't think the mind is made up, but I would say at the current time that is the most primary site that we've identified for the county. As I mentioned, there's a lot of positives about that space. You know, I understand there's past concerns, but there's opportunities for development of that space and great things. And there's only so many places in Cleveland that has some of the location possibilities that particular site does, but that's the only site that I can speak of right now. But I would say it's not the only and final site. That's obviously a discussion that we all need to continue to have.
So, Madam Chair, to Ms. Carney, I would like a little more precise answer because I wasn't real clear on what I heard. Is it the case that that this site is the only site under active consideration, or secondly, is this a site that is being primarily considered, but there are other sites that are under active consideration?
I would say at the current time, that is the only site that is under active consideration. In the past, there have been sites throughout the county and we have looked throughout the county for other opportunities, but that is the only current site.
Thanks, Madam
That
Chair.
I'm familiar with.
So, Brandy, were there any others that were identified though as possibilities? Any other buildings?
You know, again, throughout the summer, there were sites throughout the county that we did look for. There's not been a final decision on site selection that's been made. You know, as I mentioned, there's only so many sites that have the proximity and the location needs that we have, but there is no final determination at this time.
Timeline on that. When do you think there will be a decision made? You shared with us that it's primarily just one building. What is the discussion with the administration and the timeline that they're trying to reach in terms of finding the appropriate location?
Sure, Madam Chairperson. So the good part is we have a diversion center that's opening up very soon here. And we have a 2-year contract for that diversion center. So while we can explore future site locations, we'll very soon here have the opportunity for the services that we're going to need to provide that'll be able to provide. So we have some time to identify a site and work through that process. And that was one of the great benefits of having the East 55th location almost immediately available to us for diversion.
Okay. And when it's been a determination of the final building spot for the diversion center, can you come before this committee and lay out those details and all that?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
All right. And what is the proximity between the old juvenile justice and the current site that you've picked on East 55th? What's the mile difference?
I mean, it's within, you know, a few miles. East 55th isn't too, but East 55th, again, it's a great opportunity to immediately open our center very soon here in the doors. We've worked very hard. There's just some space limitations on the 55th location. You know, we wouldn't be able to likely expand beyond bed capacity, and ingress and egress routes and things of that nature are a little different, but they're fairly close, you know, I would say within 5 miles.
And so
less than that.
Yeah, who helped to determine the situation? I know we all want the diversion center to open up, but if all roads have kind of led primarily to the Juvenile Justice Center, why wasn't it determined to just go ahead and utilize that building? And instead of using the extra funding. For the
Sure.
East 50.
Well, I think again, there's a lot of discussion as we're having right now on what is the best site. You know, I don't want to just pinpoint us to only juvenile justice. That's the only one I'm speaking of, but there's not been a final decision on the location. The value when we received the responses to the RFP was that the East 55th building location was immediately vacant. It was immediately available. It had some of the proper zoning requirements that we needed. And so that was for not a huge investment as far as for building and capital. We could open up and have this opportunity available for the residents.
How are we going about actively searching for other real estate?
So I think that would be a better question for Public Works. But we can have, if that's okay, Madam Chairperson, I'd like to have that conversation with Public Works, who could, better suit to answer that question.
I thought they were going to join us today. They didn't. Okay. All right. So they're doing the active searching. All right.
Along with county administration, yes, it would be definitely a county Public Works effort.
All right. Any other questions from my colleagues? Councilman Sweeney?
Very briefly, Madam Chair. I just want to thank you for having Brandy come over and give us the update. It is nice meeting you as well, virtually. And if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I'd like to see if I can not waste time with the committee because we have a lot to do later on today, but I'd like to see if I can come over and visit Brandy and get more in-depth understanding of the opioid monies and where it can go and stuff like that. And the opportunity for the snapshot right now is very valuable to me. So thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And if you'd be so kind, Brandy, I might, or Ms. Carney, I might be giving you a call to see if I can come over and understand a little bit better.
Absolutely, Councilman. I'll shoot you an email. Thank you. I'd be happy to meet with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues in regards to the updates of the opioid settlement? One final, I guess, Brandy, and thank you again for your time and attention to this. The timeline again for it to open on East 55th, and I know you stated that I was welcome to come and visit it. I'm gonna get that on my schedule. Something.
April, so next month. We're working through, we rushed this. We're working very hard and very diligently. The Public Works group has done phenomenal. The providers are doing phenomenal. So, we're working through ordering furniture and approvals now, but our intention is to open up next month.
Has everyone been hired in terms of who's going to run the facility and all that? Has that all been finalized?
Sure. So, Madam Chairperson, we have, as you well know, or as you may know, our local Adams board was the recipient of the contract. The day-to-day operations and running our Oriana House. So since December, when this contract approved, they have been actively working to train staff, hire staff, and so we are continuing to work with them through that. But that's continuing to go well at this time.
All right, and what about the completion of the training for the officers?
So the CIT training that was part of the diversion contract is included throughout the duration of the 2 years. And so Adams board is contracted to continue to provide that training. And so that's just not 1 or 2 trainings, that's over the duration of the 2-year period contract.
Okay, thank you. One last call. Hearing none. Again, thank you, Brandy, for your update. And I guess you will bring us the final design of the locations of the buildings that will be the future site of the Diversion Center. I recommend anyone that wants to go out and see the progress, you can email Brandy. She'll meet you over there if you're interested. We used to do that back in the day where we'd all wear our hard hats and go visit a site. We have to social distance now. So Hearing none, in any miscellaneous business? All right, thank you all for your time and attention this afternoon, and you have a blessed day.